We're part of this flow of life, and to get back to harmonizing our mind, our spirit, our body involves being in nature and being connected with all of those things. And so that also means time away from devices. So go into the forest where you don't have perception and spend some time out there.
In a world moving faster than our minds were designed to handle, mental health is becoming one of the defining challenges of our time. Welcome to Mental Health in a Modern World with holistic health practitioner Greg Schmaus. After overcoming severe anxiety and OCD in his own life, Greg dedicated the past decade to helping others heal through a fully integrated approach to mental health, combining lifestyle coaching, psycho-emotional healing, mindfulness, and archetypal work. Over the years, he's facilitated thousands of sessions, guiding people back to peace, clarity, and a deeper connection with themselves. Each week, Greg shares powerful solo insights, conversations with leading voices in holistic healing, and immersive live coaching sessions that take you inside the healing process itself. New episodes every Friday. Follow the show and start reclaiming sovereignty over your mind in a modern world. Here's Greg.
Johnny, welcome to the podcast, man.
Thank you, Greg. Great to be here.
I would love to just start by offering our listeners a little bit of your background, because you have a really diverse background in your professional work. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that journey so people have an understanding of who Johnny is.
Absolutely. I believe it all started for me, started my journey, and like what the driving forces were kung fu movies. And, watching these movies when I was young, there was this like just deep connection with the archetype of the warrior, the monk, the healer monks. And there was just this draw pull to that, experiencing that, or feeling like that's something that I need to do. That later developed into Chinese martial arts at the age of 14, 15, 16, kind of getting into Chinese martial arts at that point, being very much into fitness. And then back in the later took me down this path of fitness, holistic health, very similar journeys that you've been down. And through my journey in the holistic health world, that started to just open my eyes to this is my path in life, and helping people with health and fitness led me there. The question that kind of kept coming up for me, that was kind of this driving force, is why are some people getting better out of pain or improving or reaching their goals, and some people are not? And just constantly having a curious question in my mind is what kept leading me down this path of, holistic health. So later, through several courses, studying with Paul Jack, going through all his very nutrition courses, functional medicine courses, I just realized this is my path. I want to now really kind of solidify this and move forward with a better framework for thinking about holistic medicine and add to what I currently had. And that's where intuitive felt right to go to Chinese medicine school for me, because I had already been studying the Western sciences up to that point. And this is my path, and I really want to round holistic pro. What really calls to me is Chinese medicine, as of experience of Chinese martial arts and having this early urge towards the warrior monk and healer monk. That's what led me on that journey. So I got my doctorate, acupuncture, Chinese medicine, and it's really been over 20 years of practice, from starting as a really, I would say, personal trainer and more holistic approach to being a doctor now and seeing patients in my practice with all sorts of issues, but mostly chronic pain, chronic illness.
I think it's so cool how, even going back to childhood, you see almost like this breadcrumb trail that at first, you obviously don't connect the dots, but then later on in your life, you're like, oh shit, I could see the seeds were already there, and it sounds like you had a lot of that going back pretty young.
Yeah. It's like I didn't know why I was going the direction that I was going, and now when I reflect back, I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah. So One thing I'd love to kind of unpack a little bit is number one, what are like the key principles of traditional Chinese medicine, and how does the approach from, a value standpoint, just lens of perception, differ from more, Western or conventional medicine? So what are the key principles and how does the approach differ?
Yeah. So I would say some of the key principles, like just the way that Chinese medicine looks at the body, is we could say in garden versus this is one of the analogies that's actually used in some of the books, but like Western medicine, oftentimes it looks at the body as these parts and these segments and that become, highly specialized and isolated in those particular aspects of the body, like the cardiovascular system, brain, or the gastrointestinal system. So there's a lot of separation, segregation in conventional medicine in order to get down to minutia. But for Chinese medicine, it's it's looked at it as an integrated systems and also connected with heaven and earth. That you're part of that the human being is part of the circuit, and that circuit includes spirit and matter. That's kind of like conceptually like the big differences. Uh, and then how Chinese medicine goes about how to like treat or its approach. One of the things that I think is very distinctive from Chinese medicine, Western medicine, or conventional medicine is the concept of tonifying, strengthening, or building the body. Because if you look at the mechanism of action of medications, 80% of the mechanism of actions are to block, downregulate, or inhibit some aspect of physiology. So very rarely you find medications that actually improve, optimize, harmonize, that like they don't really have those mechanisms of action. And then obviously with surgery, it's removing something, cutting something out, right? Versus Chinese medicine is how do we harmonize? How do we optimize? How do we strengthen and improve the system so that it heals itself, right?
I remember when you and I were driving up to Mount Shasta, we were having that conversation, and it really blew my mind about how almost any medication, whether it's antidepressants, antifungal, antibiotic, anti-inflammatory, it's just antihistamine, everything's anti.
Right.
Everything's an inhibition, and you wonder like, well, if you're creating like a road closed sign here, that traffic has to be redirected somewhere else.
Yes.
So I'd love for you to kind of speak on that. Like, what happens when you're constantly redirecting the flow of energy, you know, kind of like you're creating like detours like throughout the whole system? Like what's happening there?
Yeah. So a perfect example of that is actually diabetes. Yeah. So in type 2 diabetes, high blood sugar, high insulin. And so the concern from the conventional medicine viewpoint is that, and this is true, that as your blood sugar is going higher, blood sugar is getting oxidized and inflamed, and that is now inflaming end organs. So this is where we get into the complication then is like kidney failure, eye bombs, like water, higher risk of heart disease, cancer, all these things. And so the medication, some of the things that they're giving, insulin is meant to take the high blood sugar that in the system try and target it itself out of the bloodstream. Now, the problem there is that the person can get to that place before, there had to be something going on before the blood sugar got high. And what's typically happening is that they're just over consuming food and specifically in carbohydrate or sugar being the biggest culprit, and the body and its infinite wisdom. The way it works is going to use up whatever blood sugar it can right away, because it knows that if it gets too high, it's going to inflame the system. So preferentially, the body's taking the glucose into cells and using it to break ATP energy. But when the cell itself gets too full with energy, then it closes its doors. Because, again, the body is wise in saying, okay, if I pack my liver cell or an eyeball cell full of glucose, if I let it pour in, it's going to damage the cell, and I'm going to lose the function of this cell. So I'm going to pull in any more glucose. We're going to leave it outside in the bloodstream, because I'm willing to sacrifice the arteries and the stuff that the blood's touching a little bit versus the organ itself.
Yeah.
So the body already knows, it's already doing a layer of compensation to protect. But what conventional medicine does, what I don't understand is, well, I understand that it's kind of like trying to buy time for people in a way by using this medication. So no, it's more helpful, but it's shoving more glucose into the cell, which over time will create other complications and problems in the body. You can't just like block one function or push one way with a medication and not expect some kind of reciprocal action to take place. What's going to go on?
Mm. One of the things that was coming up for me is, I guess if you do compartmentalize the body into all these isolated systems, then you treat one and you might see success in that one by blocking something or inhibiting something, but you create problems in 7 other systems. But since they're isolated, you can perceive that as a win.
Right.
You don't see like the losses over here because you're not bridging the connection between the two. So you're kind of checking the box as like, oh, that's a win because we achieved this over here, even though this is happening over here.
And I'll give you a perfect example. This morning, I had a new patient, and she's got kind of a weakness, and she's getting sick all the time. And she basically got referred to me because she wants to improve her immunity. And so she sent me her previous blood work, and I saw high blood sugar and high triglycerides. And because she has high triglycerides, she also had a little bit of high cholesterol. So the doctors gave her a statin, lower the cholesterol, lowers the triglycerides. But the glucose and the A1C was still high. So again, on one end, we're like controlling the cholesterol and the triglycerides. But on the other end, there's still high blood sugar going on. And I told her, with high blood sugar will suppress the immune system, even at moderate levels of being high. And so I was just telling her the cholesterol medication is asking that issue. Like, yeah, your cholesterol is lower, but blood sugar is still high. It's not fixing the immune problem. And now the other problem being on a statin is it suppresses enzyme pathways that produce CoQ10, which is a antioxidant for the system, which is also important for the immune system. It's a perfect example of that.
Yeah. And so I'd love to transition into mental health. It's a primary focus on this show. And so how would you say, if we kind of start broad and then we'll kind of hone in on a few specifics, how does traditional Chinese medicine approach mental health? And how does that differ from a lot of like you could say, conventional psychiatric approaches that you've seen with your patients as well?
I think a good place to start in understanding mental health and how would we address it is the framework and how we look at it. So we have in the acupuncture system, we have meridians or channels, and they can be classified into sort of 2 categories. We have the 8 extraordinary vessels, which are the channels that control the flow of energy for development of the human being, as well as the mental, emotional, spiritual side, the consciousness, just the development of the human being socially. So the 8 extras are at the root of mental, emotional, spiritual development and rest. And then the other category is of the Meridians is the 12 primary channels or the 12 primary meridians, which are basically controlling the day-to-day functions and circulations of organ systems, but are also very closely tied with the expression of our emotions as well, and how they're holistically integrated with those organ systems.
And so I'd love to unpack the 8 vessels a little bit more because it's something I really don't know much of myself. So could we go into that a little bit deeper?
Yeah, absolutely. So the best place to start is how it all, think of like embryology, from
Mm,
birth, right? First, there's nothing. First, you are nothing, which in Taoist philosophy would be Wu Qi. So Wu Qi is pure potential, pure consciousness, pure creativity, right? Not materialized yet, right? But mom and dad come together and you are now a little embryo, and then Tai Chi is formed. And
mm,
that's where yin and yang is. And as far as the eight extras, the Du channel and the Ren channel are forming. So the Du goes up the spine in the back, and it's the Yang channel, and the Yang channel is associated with activity, growth, and then the Ren channel comes down the front of the body, is associated with Yin and material substance. And so the first two, the eight extras, that's how they're developing in embryological terms, is because in embryology, your spine and your gut tube, the spine and the gut tube are all growing out of each other. And that's basically yin and yang forming. And
mhm.
that's the Du and the Ren. And we can get into a little more specific about how those things are relating to emotional, mental, spiritual development. But that's the first two as far as development goes. Then the third is the Chal Meridian or the Chal channel, which is the central channel. So it's right in the middle of the body. And then we have the Dai Meridian. Well, let me back up. The Chal is actually where you start to develop self, because we also call it the sea of blood.
Mm,
The sea of blood is what also holds Shen, which is spirit, which is consciousness. When the Chong forms and the sea of blood forms, we are now bringing spirit, consciousness into the body. Then Dai forms. The Dai is this also referred to as a belt, and it circles because the Du, the Ren, and the Chong are running up and down, and then the Dai is encircling it, kind of belting it all in.
mm.
And the Dai is where essentially the dimension of space and time kind of come in the perception of that. We'd say the 10,000 things. So that's 4. 5 and 6 are referred to as yin wang and yang wang. And this is where yin and yang are actually being expressed, and would begin to take expression in your life in some way. And then we have yin chao, yang chao, as the last two, 7 and 8. This is where it actually is materialized form, the final steps or expressions of yin and yang. And they all have different associations as far as like things they're associated with. But the 8 extras, one of their primary functions is to control, we say, the cycles of 7 and 8. And the cycles of 7 and 8 are developmental cycles, both physically and emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I know you're familiar with the chakra system and how the chakra system refers to 7-year blocks of spiritual development and different things that we're supposed to go through. Chinese medicine has basically the exact same thing. The 8 extras are controlling development of those cycles of 7 and 8 as we go through our lives. Therefore, not only the physical or moral development of the body, but even the psycho-emotional development.
Beautiful. And I love how traditional Chinese medicine weaves together the medical, spiritual,
Mhm.
and biological development. And it's almost like you were like telling a story.
Yeah.
I felt like you were storytelling and seeing like how all of this kind of like emerges as a story that reveals itself through biology, or how spirit kind of like reveals itself through the biological vessel. Really beautiful. So now I'd love to apply these principles over to mental emotional health.
Yeah.
And so how can you build that bridge for us initially?
Yeah. So let's talk about the Ren and the Dew, since those were like the first ones. So let me say a little bit more about that, starting with the Ren, and then I'll kind of link it into how those can play into emotional mental issues. So with the Renmai or Ren channel, Ren Meridian, they're all synonymous kind of terms. And the Ren is the expression of Earth. Basically, it represents the ability to bear and endure being a human being. Yin is substantial in stillness, like substance and stillness. It's that which is activated at the depths and doesn't really manifest on the surface. These are all just kind of associations where I think it's important. It represents also the most earliest life issues and originates in the same place as the dew, which we call the Bao Chong, which here is, there's no physical structure for this, but it's like close to where between the anus and the tail, like there's a, dimple there or some sort that goes in, and that's where they originate from. The Ren has to do with primal connection to safety and belonging. So people may feel cut off from this and feel unsafe in the world is kind of representation of that. When we feel nourished inside, we feel a desire to nourish others. So that's very much to do with it. And then openness, receptivity, connection to others is very much related to the Ren. And the Ren also has to do with our feminine. So all the feminine energy, whether you're male or female, all that feminine energy is expressed in the Ren channel.
Can we pause there for a sec?
Yeah.
I really love how you laid that out, and what was coming up for me, I'd love your insight on it, is it feels very much related to like the root chakra
Mm-hmm.
and our connection to the earth, our connection to a sense of, like you said, safety, security. And, when you think about the modern world of technology, of overstimulation,
Mm-hmm.
of devices, it's very kind of airy. It's
Yeah.
very up here. And so I'm wondering if a lot of people's connection to that Ren and root energy would you say it's deficient? It's compromised?
It starts right at birth when you're born, and connection between mom and the child is Ren channel to Ren channel because they're the baby's out of the stomach. And that really starts that whole developmental process. Just the physical and energetic process of being chest to chest with mom is developing that. So, step one, if you didn't get that or enough of that, you may be having issues with that in life.
I'm really curious. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this with we could say maybe over medicalization of the birthing process
Yeah.
and how much that impacts that Ren energy, and therefore whether it's rates of anxiety
Mm-hmm.
or nervous system issues like later on in life, like you said, like right from the start, like the moment of birth. So I'd love for you to touch on that and whether you've seen, because I've seen this quite a bit in my work, adults that are struggling with certain health challenges. When you really track it back, a lot of times there are certain birth traumas that maybe weren't perceived as traumas because a lot of these things have been normalized. But I'd love to hear your thoughts and even clinical experience with some of that.
I wouldn't say I cracked it that closely, but like
Mm,
definitely have made insane associations with some patients because I have everyone kind of write the narrative for me when they come to see me, and I do specifically state right, from birth till now, tell me your story.
mhm.
And it is important. I- and Sometimes they don't know, but we're trying to fill in the pieces. So sometimes I have to ask the folks. So sometimes I just don't have that information. So it's hard to get the association. And other times we do it and it kind of lines up. It's like, yeah, I was in the queue, for like weeks and basically didn't, I wasn't with mom and dad for weeks. So, and then now they're dealing with, anxiety. They've always had it their whole life, right? Ever since they were little, they said, can't remember at home I didn't have anxiety as a child.
And so, what would you say with this Ren energy? What are the most common symptoms
Yeah.
that you might see with a deficiency or imbalance there?
So it'll typically be physical manifestations can be sexual or reproductive symptoms. So anything for females related to like pain during intercourse, to very disrupted menstrual cycles, and for men, it can be impotence, premature ejaculation. So basically everything are up front. So we have on the front, we have the sexual organ function, which is where it starts to come out. And then you have digestive functions. So even digestive dysfunction can be manifestations, any kind of digestive symptoms. Respiratory things, so lung or sinuses can be part of it. And then hormonal, because um, the REM is controlling these cycles of 7 and 8, and that can a woman's supposed to get her period at a certain point. And in Chinese medicine, the females are on the cycle of 7. So at second cycle at 7, 14, this their hyat way comes, which is their heavenly essence, which is essentially their magic current, put in a very eloquent way. And that can be disrupted. That can come much earlier or later as a representation of red disharmony.
Mhm. And so, when you see that, are you usually treating it with herbs? Are there certain practices? What's usually your approach to bring that back into balance?
Yeah, so herbs and acupuncture uh, would be the two main things. I would say those are the things I use pretty much the most. There are specific treatments for the Ren channel and for these deeper energetic dysfunctions.
Mhm.
There is this whole system of 8 extras acupuncture treatments that are meant to target those energy dysfunctions or imbalances that are occurring at some point in our life, whether it's due to like poor birth or some sort of trauma we experienced later in life or something that disrupted these energetic developmental channels, these 8
Mm.
extras.
Mhm. And so the yang one you said goes down the backside. Oh, up
Yeah.
the backside.
Mhm.
So can you talk about that a little bit and what you might find as imbalances, dysfunctions when that channel is out of balance?
So the do is, like I said, related to the yang.
Mhm.
And so indications actually could be asthma, like difficulty urinating, poor circulation, because the yang is sort of driving the circulation. The yang is this like pushing force.
Mhm.
Uh, General lack of just vitality, energy, thriving, and development can also be seen as slow development in children as they
Mhm.
and having neurodevelopmental disorders. Anything related actually to the central nervous system, because it essentially goes into the brain at the top. So any central nervous system disorders or brain disorders, developmental disorders, uh, is kind of an expression of the dew channel dysfunction.
So is the dew channel, which is interesting, it's like doing, like it's yang. Yeah. Um, would that be more of like the sympathetic
Yes,
nervous system and the REN would be like the parasympathetic system?
100% correct.
Mm-hmm.
Because on the dew channel, there's where your kidneys are. You have adrenal glands that sit on top of the kidneys, and the adrenal glands are producing adrenaline and cortisol, which are like energy-based kind of hormones. And again, they sit close to the spine as far as where they are on the body, so they are more posterior or on the back of the body. And in Chinese medicine, they call that the life gate, or the Nigmun, which is the gate of fire, gate of life. And so when the dew energy goes up, it's part of that kidney energy, adrenal energy is what's also driving the dew or the yang energy up.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, it's with that energy.
Mm-hmm. I remember when we were in Mount Shasta and you were teaching Qigong, there's something that you said that was really beautiful. It was something like the power of your yang is dependent on like the depth of your yin, something like that. What was that statement that you said that was, for me, it was really, really powerful, really
Yeah.
simple, but
Yeah. I think I really just dovetailed on what Mike said, because Mike heard that, I think, from somebody else. But
well, I'll give you credit for it.
yeah. But I've heard that too, exactly. It's something that we talk about in Chinese medicine all the time. The yin anchors the yang. And so the yang, he did not have the yin. Yang would just be like all over the place, lost and etherical and just blasting out. There's nothing to ground it, essentially. It's like
Mm-hmm.
lightning that's looking for a place to ground. And it's just chaotic, right? Just pure chaos. It's not organized. The yin is what grounds the yang. And so as an expression like ADD or just distractibility, that's an expression of like yang being all over the place and unable to ground through the
Mm-hmm.
qualities of the body. And so you cannot fully express your yang energy if there's not enough yin energy
Mm-hmm.
grounded. And so you'll be much more distracted, much more just your energy's all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
When you cultivate enough yin to ground the focus, to ground the energy, then yeah, you can be laser focused. You can be more efficient, very centered, very efficient with that energy. It's not lost. It's not escaping, essentially.
Mm. This, I love how we are able to kind of tie this into the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems. Because a lot of people, at least now with a little bit more kind of research and talk about, how nervous system challenges are at the root of a lot of our health challenges, especially like mental, emotional, and how if we don't have enough parasympathetic activity and we're always in that like fight or flight state, our psyche is always in a state of survival. And so we're always perceiving through the lens of fear and security. And so we're always looking for the proverbial lion or tiger that's chasing us. So it sounds like this is a very similar, at least at the foundation,
Yes.
very similar kind of approach.
So I'm always considering balancing these forces, the yin and yang forces in somebody's body, whether it's related to mental, emotional, or physical manifestation.
Beautiful. And so, the other piece that you mentioned is the 12 standard meridians.
Yeah.
I'd love for you to we don't have to go through all of them, but just kind of touch on what those are and the function of them.
Yeah. So the 12 Schmaus at the body are associated with the various organs, and then they have pairs. Okay, so the best place to start, I think, is the liver and the gallbladder because they're paired organs. And the liver is actually called the strategist, and it's it part of who's saying strategizes our life path. It's part of controlling our life path, and then the gallbladder in its paired organ is called the minister of decision, and that's what actually executes. Her gallbladder is what executes decision in your lives. For somebody who is maybe like very fickle, like back and forth and like has trouble making decisions about things and what they should do in their lives. Much we say weak gallbladder. So in the 12 channels, they're controlling the day-to-day flow of these organ systems, but they're also very much related to how we're expressing ourselves in our lives and the emotions associated with that. The liver is also associated with emotional anger, frustration, or resentment. And so this can come up either as you're having actual physical liver problems, and then that's create, say, liver heat, and that generates anger, frustration, and resentment in your lives. Or the other way around, where you have anger, frustration, and now you're actually creating physical liver problems.
So it's a two-way highway.
Yeah.
So the emotion can create physical challenges in the organ, and then physical challenges in the organ can create imbalances or challenges emotionally.
For the another one is the heart. So the heart is paired with the small intestine, but then there's also pericardium. Pericardium is the sac that's kind of is outside of the heart, case of the heart. The heart, we say, is associated with joy, but really, the heart, Chinese medicine would say, houses the germ, houses consciousness. The pericardium, we say, the ambassador of the heart, is the expression of joy in our lives and love. The heart itself, how does the consciousness, how does the shit? As far as some of the issues that could present there, actually, as somebody who is easy to be super giggly and just not serious. Well, that's not, it's like just you sort of very physical, very glee all the time. You can actually sometimes hear it in their voice, like laughing all the time when they're talking in some way. This is that for Chinese medicine, they tell us to pay attention. How do they speak? Are they kind of laughy all the time? Do they have this like deep groaning kind of sound in their voice? Like what's the sing-song nature to their voice? And what is that pointing to? Organ systems, their emotional state. And so somebody with that giggly kind of expression, we say, man, we have weakness of the heart. And not enough yin. I'm not yin, the ground, the energy. So it's kind of like you get free all the time.
So with these organ pairs, like you said, the heart and small intestine, the liver, gallbladder, I think one is like the lung and the large intestine. Like, so do you have one yin organ and one yang organ in these pairs? Is that how that works?
So they're called the zong and the fu. The zong are on the yin-based organs, so so those are, you say, dense. And the fu organs are the hollow-spaced organs. So stomach, bladder, gallbladder, lungs, large intestine, right? We say those are the hollow-spaced organs, or the fu organ. It's yin and yang. The heart is unique because it has this pericardium. It's pericardium is still. So there is this pairing going on.
And so when you have, let's say you have someone come to you with anxiety or depression or some kind of emotional turbulence in their life, are you a lot of times going to the Meridian system, going to the organs and seeing if you can kind of clear some of those systems up, and then you kind of see how their psycho-emotional system responds?
Yeah, yeah. So for anxiety would be associated with the stomach, which we say is the home for worry or anxiousness. And so a lot of times there's digestion going on. And the beauty with Chinese medicine is that you don't always have to like go into the psycho-emotional stuff. You can just work on acupuncture herbs and supporting those channeled in those meridians. And it can influence it can influence their mood, how they're expressing themselves. And so that's oftentimes where I'm starting with folks, even though I may still point out that like the idea of certain life circumstances and things going on that's generating this anxiety, and working on that on a deeper level is a root cause issue. We can still treat from this other angle and still support you. So it's like we almost give you the energy that you need to outgo the issue that's really at the root, and that's what I think is beautiful. Uh, we're not always going right to the root, for it, supporting the body, strengthening their systems so that at some point they can take on.
Yeah. What I love about this, and I'd love for you to kind of build on it a little bit, is it's kind of like a bottoms up approach.
Mhm.
A lot of times in mental health, it's more of a top down, but this bottoms up approach is really beautiful. And, what was coming up for me is in order for someone to attend to some of the real root issues, like let's say trauma, if you don't have much life force in you, you're not going to have the energy reserves to be able to do that work.
Right.
And so by attending to these systems, you're kind of creating almost like this reservoir of vitality that the person can draw from when they do attend to some of that deeper work. Is that kind of what your approach is?
Really. I mean, I feel like the low hanging fruit is what we should go for, which is like, what's the easiest things that begin to change our lives or support that just start inching us closer to maybe working on the deeper stuff. I think, in my practice, I do try to lay out the big picture as far as like, here's all the components I think are going on with your case. Here's a root cause deep stuff, say I'm kind of like pointing to that. Like this may be a significant driver, but then here's like easy day one stuff you can start with right away, already supporting you and supporting physical, but will strictly have this on your mental emotional state and how you feel about beginning to approach the root causes.
Beautiful. And so one of the most common challenges that I see with people that I've worked with is this overactive, racy mind. Like this mental chatter. They can't quiet the mind. And so I'm curious, from a Chinese medicine standpoint, this overactive mind that doesn't settle, is there an imbalance, a root cause, or something going on in these systems that causes the mind to kind of be in that overactive state?
Yes. So it's associated, we say it's green energy, earth energy. We just call it pensiveness, right? Which is overthinking or ruminant. It really is just, so we can think about it two angles. One is you're drawing all your earth energy, the spleen, the digestive energy, and bringing it up to the head. And you are, we can say that modern technology has fractured our attention so much. That's what it's doing. It's actually like a parasite, sucking our energy, our earth energy up into the head and fracturing our attention. Ever had any of these things that, as we were human beings, that we have now that are pulling our attention in so many different directions, getting notifications and pings and social media. And it's just, we now have extremely fractured attention spans. And that is sort of sucking away and pulling away, we say, our earth. It's spleen energy, it's digestive energy. Either somebody, let's say constitutional, has weak spleen, weak earth energy, and they have this kind of presentation or monkey mind. And so essentially it's like you got to work on your yin, your digestive yin, earth energy, grounding, right? Spleen, all of these things to help anchor the monkey mind.
And how about, I mean, it's not the other extreme, but someone who experiences, let's say, severe depression, like when someone's system goes into more of a depressive state
Yeah.
rather than that kind of anxious energy, like what's happening from a Chinese medicine standpoint there if we go to the other kind of polarity?
So the liver is always involved with depression. As we said, the liver controls the flow of qi and blood throughout the body. And so if you're in more of this depressed state, you're not having as much circulation and flow of the normal energies throughout the body. So we say that there's usually liver qi stagnation going on, or the liver is congested in some way. So liver is always involved. Now, oftentimes there could be, we say, deficiency on top of that, that we say maybe somebody's kidney energy or spleen energy has become deficient, and that's making it harder for smooth flow of qi throughout the body. So they're more likely to get into a liver issue that's not circulating the energy as well. So it's just easier for them to fall into a depressive state. That's sort of like how the organs are more represented in that.
It's so interesting because a lot of times you hear this a lot, how a lot of people say certain expressions of like certain cases of depression are related to repressed anger or anger that instead of it being expressed outward is turned inward. And obviously, like you shared earlier, anger being the emotion associated with the liver. I never really made that correlation until you just mentioned that now that stagnant liver qi is really associated.
Yeah, and then the depression may actually be repressed anger. So it may be starting from that place because there's not enough energy to actually experience and express the anger. So it's first felt as depression, and it's just lower level because there's just not even enough energy to deal with the emotions. So they're just flat, maybe, until we say maybe more kidney energy, more spleen energy, more energy comes in, and then it moves that liver energy. And all of a sudden, they're like feeling the repressed anger.
Yeah. And the last kind of case study that I'm really curious about is how does Chinese medicine look at addiction? Like when someone's struggling with a lot of addictive patterning, are there certain imbalances or certain deficiencies or blocks that you might see from a Chinese medicine standpoint when you see someone that's in some reoccurring pattern of addiction?
Yeah, and actually, this actually comes back to the REN channel, actually. The REN is understimulated. It just means that people are having a hard time with connecting. So if they're having a harder time with connecting, then they're looking a way to fill that connection with something. And so that's where some addictions can come in. And so that is actually one aspect of addiction, is treating the REN and build that yin and that REN energy for self-love, because they're looking for something outside of them to fill that void, right? And so the Ren channel has very much to do with that. And so,
which is so fascinating because you mentioned earlier how the Ren also ties into birth and the Ren to Ren connection with the mother. And one thing that I have found, over the years working with a lot of addiction with clients is how much their addictions track back to attachment injuries with their mother.
mm,
And so I'm curious if those attachment injuries with the mother, how that impacts the Ren. And then you have these addictive tendencies as almost like an adaptation.
yeah, absolutely.
Beautiful. This show being, mental health in a modern world,
Hmm.
um, from a Chinese medicine standpoint, what would your, even just a few simple or practical like recommendations be for people that might be struggling with their mental health or might be kind of caught up in the overstimulation of our tech driven, device driven, fast paced modern worlds? Like, what would some kind of like key recommendations be to whether it's to help ground, to help build that like yin reserve, anything that you would recommend for people?
Yeah. So number one is just spending more time in nature. In Chinese medicine, it's completing the circuit between heaven and earth, as the human being is like the middle of that. So we're part of this flow of life, and to get back to harmonizing our mind, our spirit, our body involves being in nature and being connected with, all of those things. And so that also means time away from devices, right? Because that naturally exclude those things. So go into the forest where you don't have perception and spend some time out there. So another good practice, which would be, what we do at the retreat, and I actually give this to patients too, is really just drinking qigong and shaking your body. It's so simple, and I try and, give people simple things so that it's really accessible. And because we can get pulled in so many different directions throughout our lives, because our lives are so busy, we lose connection with the body, or we take on certain energies and emotions of people, surroundings, and things. So it's like you kind of lose yourself a little bit in this sea that we're kind of living in. And so with shaking qigong, you can basically just stand in one place and shake your body. I mean, anybody can find videos of it online easily if you just look up shaking qigong on YouTube. But if you just spend 5-10 minutes just shaking in, one place, it can completely change your state of being, both emotionally, mentally, and physically.
Mm.
So that you can kind of recenter, refocus, just figure out, where do I go next? What am I doing? Or do I need to sit and just chill for a little bit? It's a great, I say, cleansing and clearing practice to do at any point, because you can do it anywhere.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
So more time in nature and do some shaking out there while you're at it.
Mm.
Beautiful. And if someone would like to either follow up with you, reach out to you, work with you, where would you like to direct them?
Yeah, so my website is unifiedsma.com, which is functional medicine acupuncture, but it's unifiedsma.com. And basically, you just click on the homepage discovery call, and you just schedule it for a call to talk and see what's going on, how I can help.
Beautiful. Johnny, thank you so much for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Greg. It's been awesome.